The town of Bedford sits quietly in the foothills of Virginia. With a population of only 3,200, the bonds amongst their kids had developed at a very young age. Little do these children know is that 30 of the boys in Bedford would enlist in the United States military. They had never imagined that the world would be in the midst of the most destructive war it had ever faced. Nor did they suspect that 22 of their young men from Bedford, Virginia, would perish on the beaches of Normandy. But despite their losses, their sacrifice would lead the Allied powers into triumph on June 6, 1944. These men would forever be known as the Bedford Boys. For 2 decades after World War I, European countries had struggled to stabilize their power. Adolf Hitler took advantage of the chaos and rose to power with his Nazi party in Germany, aiming for world domination. Allying with Japan and Italy, Hitler's power increased drastically, giving him the ability to expand his control. Finally, on September 1, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. Only 2 days following the invasion, France and Britain declared war. World War II had begun. America refused to intervene in the war, dealing with its own internal issues. But on December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft attacked the U.S. naval base located at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Taken back by this surprise attack, Congress promptly declared war on Japan. Germany and the other Axis powers therefore declared war on the United States, officially bringing the U.S. into World War II. World War II had dragged on for 5 years and the end still wasn't in sight. The Allies needed a plan to come out victorious. Dwight Eisenhower and Bernard Montgomery came up with a plan to bring the Germans to their knees. The plan was to drop paratroopers into France while it was dark. They were on a mission to take over the Pegasus Bridge, which allowed Germans to move during battle. Following the paratroopers' invasion, the troops would amphibiously move in on 5 beaches: Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha, and Utah. Gold and Sword beaches were the landing sites for the British infantries. The Canadian infantry was to seize Juneau, and the American infantries were to invade Utah and Omaha beaches. The plan became known as Operation Overlord, also referred to as D-Day because the exact date that they would put the operation into plan was unknown. In 1942, the Bedford Boys were called to service and began training with the 29th Infantry Division. The division was made up of former National Guard units. One of the regiments among the 29th was the 116th Infantry. In Company A of the 116th Infantry were the 30 boys who came from Bedford, Virginia. The 29th Infantry Division sailed to England and began training for 21 months. One of the first infantries to complete the amphibious training was the 116th. Knowing that the 29th Infantry had not yet seen battle, they were selected to be a part of the invasion on Normandy.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months.
The Bedford Boys were the first wave of ships to be launched on Omaha Beach. On June 6, 1944, the boats appeared along the shore in Normandy. Most of the men were dead within the first 20 minutes, a tragedy no one saw coming. Bullets flew through the air, hitting Boat 1. The constant target for machine guns, most men aboard the ship did not survive. Ray Nance jumped off the ship into the water below. He recalls, "I think that is what saved me." As Boat 2 approached the beach, it was seemingly empty. It looked wrong to the soldiers as the airmen were to form craters so the men had better chances of survival on the beach. "My God, we're coming in at the right spot, but look at it. No shingle, no wall, no shell holes, no cover, nothing," Lieutenant Edward Tidrick cried out. 6:30 a.m. rolled around, and then the Germans unleashed their machine guns. Boat 3 was hit with a shell. 2 men were killed instantly. Many others went hurling out of the craft into the water, drowning. Boat number 4 approached shore and hit an obstacle the Germans had set up in the water. Hit head-on, Boat 5 was the first ship to sink. 6 members aboard drowned before help arrived. The others bobbed in the water until a nearby craft picked them up. Boat 6 carried Captain Taylor N. Fellers and Lieutenant Benjamin R. Kerfoot and 30 other soldiers. It's not exactly known what happened to the boat and everything aboard it, but some of the drowned bodies were found ashore. Boat 7 carried the medical unit. As they came ashore, the Germans quickly surrounded them. Most of the men were killed on the boat before they could help their comrades. 22 out of the 30 boys who came from Bedford, Virginia, lost their lives within an hour of the first excursion in Normandy. They never returned home after World War II ended. Those in Bedford refer to D-Day as the longest day. News and media covered the invasion and kept people updated about the successes and losses. Families were filled with angst, wanting to secure that their loved ones were safe and that the Allies would win. Not only had survivors of the invasion been scared by their experiences, but their families had been devastated by their losses. The news of the deceased soldiers arrived to Bedford, Virginia on July 17th via telegrams. The telegrams came to Elizabeth Tease at the Western Union booth at Green's drugstore. She recalls, "I had a job to do, a responsibility. I don't remember crying, but it was shocking to get so many messages and keep them confidential and find someone to take them out to the families. It was one of the saddest things I've ever had to do, delivering that sad news to a loved one." The impact of the boys from Bedford was a tragedy that struck the town. The town wasn't the same and would forever be missing something. Lucille Bodges, the sister of Bedford and Raymond Hobach, who died on D-Day, explained, "I've often thought, well, if all of these men had come back, how would this community be different and what contribution would they have made? And I just felt like it would have been a better place, and I think that we still sort of cry for them and miss them."
The loss of 22 soldiers from Bedford, Virginia is a significant tragedy occurring from the invasion of Normandy, which had a total 425,000 deaths. However, D-Day was just the beginning of the end of World War II. After the first wave invaded Omaha Beach, the following waves continued. Men had to create paths for one another. Despite being injured, soldiers would continue invading Normandy. They'd shoot holes into the barbed wire fences and set off mines, leaving paths for the men behind. Sacrifices had to be made in order for the invasion to be successful. At the end of the D-Day invasion, more than 150 Allied troops had landed in Normandy. D-Day was known as the beginning of the end of World War II. The Allies had managed to push the Germans back and reinforcements had come. On June 13th, Allied forces captured Carentan. On June 26th, the Allies captured the French port Cherbourg and Germans then began to retreat. On August 25th, 1944, France was liberated. After D-Day, the Allied powers were able to push eastward. All the while, the Soviet Union was entrenching on German territory. Hitler tried to make a counterattack, the Battle of Bulge in December of 1944, but it was unsuccessful. The Allies entered Berlin and found Adolf Hitler dead after he committed suicide on April 30th, 1945. Germany held little resistance and surrendered, and on May 8th, 1945, the Allies accepted Germany's surrender, a victorious triumph for the Allies. D-Day was a tragic day when many sons, fathers, brothers, and friends were lost. Families all across the world were changed forever. Their lives were forever impacted by their losses, while Bedford, Virginia suffered the nation's most D-Day casualties. Bedford was a national symbol for sacrifice during the most devastating times. On June 6, 2001, the National D-Day Memorial was dedicated to the beautiful town of Bedford. President George W. Bush spoke to the town as they celebrated the anniversary of D-Day. D-Day held a lot of tragedy for Bedford, Virginia, and all the soldiers who lost their lives. However, with this tragedy, a triumph was created. Because of the sacrifices made by the Bedford Boys, the Allies were able to pressure the Nazi Germans and end the war that took 80 million lives.